Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Unstoppable Mindset. Today, our guest is Mary Beth Schrudder, who is a life coach. She will talk to us about addiction. I'm interested in that. And she's going to talk to us about how the law of attraction gets involved in what she does. And that I want to talk about, among other things, because we hear a lot about the law of attraction, but I don't know how many people really understand what it is. So we'll get to all that as we go forward. But Mary Beth, I want to welcome you to Unstoppable Mindset and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for sending me the invitation. It's nice
Well,
being here.
well, I'm glad you're here and it's a lot of fun. And as I've told people, especially lately, the only rule on the podcast is we both have to have fun. So you got to have fun. Otherwise, it's not fun to do.
Got it. Well, I can
Yeah,
do that
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
There you go. Well, tell me a little about the early Mary Beth growing up and all that sort of stuff. Let's start with that.
Oh gosh. Well, early Mary Beth. So it turns out that I have a little bit of something called an addictive personality, which led to me actually. I had my first drink of alcohol at 11 years old. And I was with some friends, and we all did, and kind of snuck it. Of course, this wasn't given to us by grown-ups or anything, but I just remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is the answer to all my problems," because I had social anxiety, and I didn't really realize how bad it was until I had that relief from my first drink of alcohol. It just felt like this was the answer. I'd never felt such relief before. And that's a sign, that's a sign for anyone who's listening here. When you that's a like a big red flag for this person's probably going to learn the bad way how to self-medicate using a toxin, which I don't drink alcohol anymore. I'm completely sober, but I had a 30 plus year career of unhealthy relationship. I don't like to say I'm an alcoholic, but I had a very unhealthy relationship with alcohol for decades. And, I just, about 4.5 years ago now, a little over 4.5 years ago, I just decided, that this was just, I knew too much about, like you mentioned earlier, I knew too much about the law of attraction. I taught people law of attraction. I was already a life coach, and you guys, I never had a rock bottom. You don't have to have a rock bottom if you just know something is not good for you, something is not serving you anymore. I was running two businesses. So this wasn't I'm not a person who was dysfunctional. And I always had this sneaking suspicion that when I quit drinking, I was really going to, that's when my life was really going to take off even more so than it was. And sure enough, that's what happened. Like I am so much happier. I'm capable of feeling so much more joy. And when we numb our feelings, with something like a substance like alcohol, or it could be drugs, or it could just be other addictions like binging Netflix or something, we're still numbing out, or we could be using relationships as an addiction. Codependency is real. Most of my clients with addiction, it's actually an addiction to another person, not even a substance. So like, that's the number one thing that I run across anyway in my practice. But when we numb our feelings, we're actually numbing all of them, even the good ones too. So like I knew that I would be like your podcast is called Unstoppable once I finally kicked these addictions. And I also had a food addiction. Food is huge, by the way. I have a lot of clients who come to me for food addiction. I was so much a sugar addict, and I didn't realize how much that was affecting my mental health. And it sounds crazy, but sugar really does create anxiety and even depression for some people. Our diet is huge. Like I didn't know all the connections mentally and physically that sugar addiction and food addiction in general could create.
I guess it's a good thing that I watch my chocolate intake then.
What do you mean by watching it? You're just watching yourself eat it, or?
No, I like chocolate a lot, but I've never just sat and eaten a lot of chocolate. But it's fun to tease about chocolate, of course. But
Oh, my mom called herself a chocoholic,
yeah,
and then,
I've heard
then
of
that's
people
where I
that do
got the
that.
term. Yeah,
I
I got her sweet tooth for sure, for
I
sure.
like chocolate, but not that much. And for me, and I know this isn't about me, but strangely, I never liked the taste of alcohol, and I didn't even have my first drink of it until, oh, how old was I? I had to be 24 or 25, but I've seen and I saw people who overindulged. I had a roommate
Mhm.
who drank three large glasses and over one night. And with each glass, the first one was half vodka and half orange juice. The second was three-quarters vodka, and the third was straight vodka. That was horrible. I mean, my other
Oh,
roommate and I had to be with him all night, but it sort of convinced me I'm not interested in any of that, and I've never experimented with any of that. But
good job.
but I do have to say that there's nothing wrong with a little bit of chocolate now and then,
Yeah, no, that
a
you
little
just made me
bit.
cringe with that story because it just gives me some flashbacks, and
Yeah.
my thing was red wine, and so
Ooh,
something I would like to say is that, it's it's hard to tell when you have an addiction when
yeah.
everyone you're around is drinking the same amount
Yeah.
or more.
Yeah.
In our society, alcohol is so accepted, like that now. I'm the strange one for not drinking. Like people are look at me like the oddball, um, for choosing not to partake, right? And so, but it was more acceptable when I was drinking every day, And when I say that, it's like, a couple glasses of wine at dinner or whatever, but like it really starts to affect you. And I wouldn't always stop at two. I had a problem with moderation in general, and that's what I
Hmm.
mean by my addictive personality. Like, so I don't have a stop button. I'm unstoppable. So I would just like, start drinking a couple glasses, and it's so easy. And I know this is so relatable to so many people because of my clients and because of my friends and just being alive in general, how
Yeah.
easy it is to have a bottle of wine and you're just sitting there talking to somebody. Next thing you know, the bottle's gone. Oh, well, let's order another one.
Yeah.
This isn't like, I'm not talking about that type of person who's drinking alcohol out of a paper bag under a bridge. I'm talking about something that happens to everyone I know, and then the next day really sucks. Your night of sleep really sucks because alcohol affects your sleep cycle. Like
Yeah.
you do not get the same level of quality, not the quality of sleep. And actually, Michael, that was my first way I figured out. Like I thought I had insomnia, and I knew I was like kind of generalized anxiety. But when I was reading about, I was getting a certified in addiction recovery, not thinking I had any addictions, of course. And by the way, everyone tells me, well, I don't have any addictions. No one thinks they have addictions, but I don't think they realize what addictions are, to be honest. That's another thing that I help people understand is, our little cell phones, those are addictions. We all like addicted to the scrolling. We can be addicted to validating, how many people liked my post, how many people, commented, things like that. Like I mentioned earlier, just Netflix and there's so many things. There's gambling and the
I
food.
rem I remember many years ago when we still had Blackberries as a device,
Mm-hmm.
and um, one of the things that happened was one night, um, the whole BlackBerry system went down. It was, I think, the first time it went down. It was late at night, but it was down for about 12 hours. And I heard the next day that there were even people who were so addicted to their Blackberries and they were so panicked that they committed suicide.
Are
And
you kidding
I'm
me?
not kidding you.
Oh
I
my
saw it on the
God.
news, and it's just amazing.
Awful.
People do get so locked into things. um, but I know what you're saying about people just being so locked into texts and all that. And for me,
And
again,
I had to get through that too. Like I have to literally sometimes put my phone in a different room because I have this thing where I feel like I need to respond to people right away.
yeah,
And so it's like you don't have to do that. We can relax, and so it's something that we coach ourselves every day. If you have that type of personality, it's not like you get to graduate ever and be like, okay, I'm done being having addictive personality. No, this is daily work, and that's
yeah.
why people I think go to AA and things like that because it keeps renewing the whole reason why they decided to abstain from something to begin with.
Why is it that people have become so addicted, let's say, to alcohol? Why is it that that is so popular? Is it just the numbing, or exactly what is it that brings people to that?
No, that's a really good question. Yeah, absolutely. The numbing. Most people that I talk to, the habit forms over time because of like the same reason that I, ended up having the habit was social anxiety. Social anxiety is huge. Just being around people. And just being a little bit anxious, and it's an interesting thing. But I also think, yeah, the numbing out, I think escaping your reality. Maybe you just have so many things going on that you don't like in your life, and it's just people are usually seeking relief. And then there's also a huge number of people who get into drinking to forget things. So this could be like a trauma. Maybe they had a traumatic childhood. Trauma is a huge reason for
Mm-hmm.
any type of addiction. It's a distraction from things you don't want to think about. You can kind of escape that and forget. Like a lot of people you'll see start drinking a lot after a breakup, things like that. Just it really helps them escape reality and helps them not think about things from their past that they really are trying to stuff down and suppress. And the problem with that is that we don't actually get rid of those things. When we suppress our feelings, they are still there. And, no amount of denial gets rid of them. The way to really work on yourself and transform and become the person that you want to be, to become the unstoppable person, would be to actually get to that, deal with your feelings. Instead of suppressing them, talk to somebody about them and work through them. And because when we hold our feelings in, it causes all sorts of issues because they're still always there. And when you see people get triggered, like, people who are easily triggered and they just like go off on you for no, like, it seems like no apparent reason. It seems like they're like maybe overreacting. Those knee-jerk reactions are basically things that they haven't dealt with. They're indicators of parts of themselves that they have not yet taken the time to heal, right? And so that's when people get triggered. That's their indicators.
But we don't encourage people to talk about their feelings very much. Oh, that's you got to be tougher than that. You don't want to talk about your feelings. You don't want to share
Especially
your
men.
feelings,
Especially men. Like I feel
especially
like
men.
society has done such a disservice to men, just suck it up. And yeah, almost making it like it's embarrassing if you share your feelings. And to me, I have an opposite belief, and this is what I would teach everyone. And I have a lot of male clients too, who I'm so glad that they're able to feel like they can be vulnerable with me, because vulnerability is strength.
Mm-hmm.
Pretending that you don't have feelings, that's, to me, that's the weak way to be. To me, if I was going to talk about a real man is, honest and shares his feelings, and doesn't feel ashamed to be vulnerable. And because we need to share this, and it's really not healthy in any way, shape, or form to pretend like everything's okay when it's not. And it's good to reach out for help.
You talked about being addictive to another person. Tell me more about what that is.
So everything that I coach in my practice is stuff that I've been through personally.
Mm-hmm.
I have all the education, all these certifications, but I got to be honest, my life experience has been the best teacher. And I have
No
had
surprise.
Right. I couldn't imagine being like in my 20s. I turned 50 this year in September, and I just could not imagine being in my 20s or even my 30s and being any good at being a life coach. To be a good life coach, you really have to have experience.
Yeah.
And if you're seeking somebody out, you guys, whoever you decide to look for help, make sure they have experience, personal experience in exactly whatever you're trying to level up on. So to answer your question, codependency, a lot of us, we end up in toxic relationships and codependent relationships because a lot of it's just programming, like from our childhood, and it might be like a parent, things that we experienced as childhood. Some of us might turn into people pleasers because possibly, this isn't everybody, but I was definitely used to be a people pleaser where I was afraid that, that I wasn't going to be wanted. So I made sure that I was needed, if that makes sense.
Mm.
So like I was a middle child, I didn't get a lot of attention. I had an older sister, a younger brother. So I went for the negative attention. But also, when with other people, with my parents, I would go for negative attention more than anything. I was in trouble a lot. Okay, we'll put it. But with other people, I wanted them to like me. So I would just kind of go overboard and overcompensate and make sure that they needed me. And people pleasing seems like it's really nice, but the reality is when you're a people pleaser, you're not being your true authentic self, because what you're doing is you're just telling people whatever they want to hear. Okay. You're not, like, and let's say that they ask you for a favor and you're like, sure. And you do it, but you secretly resent doing it, but you do it anyway because you want to please them. You want them to like you. You're abandoning yourself, but you're also not really being too nice, because you're resenting that person for even asking you to do them a favor. And it's just not being authentic. It's better just to have healthy boundaries. And I've learned how to do this over time. But when you are a people pleaser, you easily can end up in a toxic relationship with a codependent type relationship with someone who's going to take advantage of the people pleasing. And, you get a lot of that, the toxic cycle. It's very typical if you're someone who's like very empathetic, like you feel other people's feelings, you care about what people think. It's very easy to end up with someone who might be more like of a narcissist and self-serving. They make a very great codependent toxic relationship together, and the narcissist can find that empath, people pleaser, quote unquote nice person. They can smell you from miles away, basically. Yeah. Because you're very easy to take advantage of for them.
Now you have a family today, right?
So I'm divorced for a long time now, but I have a son, and he turns 21 next month. So
my gosh,
blows my mind. Yeah, he's about to, in a year he graduates from college.
Wow, what's his major?
It's business. It's like, gosh, I always forget what it is. It's a new name for human resources type thing, but it's business. It's something to do with, it's like human resources, but they have a new name for it. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Like, I can't believe you forgot again, Mom. But yeah, I forgot again.
If he listens to this, you're going to hear about it.
It'll come to me. It might come to me at 3 a.m., but I'll remember.
So how did working with him and interacting with him and growing up with addictions and so on, how did all that go, and how did you deal with all that?
That's an excellent question, and I'm glad you asked, because I have a lot to say around that. So my son watched me drinking, he saw my personality change, and something about me is I am very authentic, and I keep things real even with my son. And when, I would tell him, like, let's say that I would get anxiety when I drank. So a lot of people don't realize that if you already have a tendency to be an anxious type, generalized anxiety person, it's kind of like my nervous system is just built that way. And drinking alcohol is like pouring gasoline on anxiety. It is awful. So when I would drink even 2 glasses of wine, I would wake up in the middle of the night, feeling extra anxious. And there's scientific reason for that, is because your body, this is on purpose, it's doing its job by creating stimulants to counteract the depressants. Alcohol's a depressant. So then you create all these stimulants, and then that alcohol wears off, and all you're left with is feeling all the stimulants that your body created, and that causes anxiety. And we call it hangxiety, when you still feel all that anxiety the next day through a hangover. And my son, I was very honest with him. I would tell him, Spencer, I know that, you saw me, it looks like we're having fun. I'm with my friends. We're having fun. You're here. He's, with me, witnessing us drinking together. And I would be honest. I was like, it is not worth it. So I always say, you could teach your kids in a couple of ways, either by being a good example or by being a horrible warning. And I feel like I did the latter, and it works. Like, he has not drank anything. He doesn't want to drink alcohol because I've always was honest with him, and that yes, it looks like I'm having fun. That fun is so temporary and it's not worth the trade-off. It's not worth lowering your vibration, like the law of attraction stuff. It takes you, it actually destroys your whole, not only your next day, but you're not really back to normal. Alcohol can stay in your system for 3 days.
Yeah.
And I was in the vicious cycle of, well, I don't want to feel this horrible feeling, so I'm just going to have another drink. And once you realize the hair of the dog that bit you actually works, it's a horrible cycle, because then you can just go, okay, well, I'm going to have a drink in the morning, and you could see how that could be really, really bad. If you don't have a stop button like me, then you're day drinking, and it's just a nightmare. It was just a total nightmare. And my son was very aware of my addiction, and he was just honestly just would never drink. Well, I'm not going to say he would never drink. He turns 21 next month, but I think that he would catch himself if he ever saw any because all of his friends drink. He's the only one who doesn't. So I just don't think it's going to be an issue with him.
Did he ever say things to you though, like, well, but if it's really not fun, how come you continue to do it, or anything like that? Did you ever have that deep of a discussion?
You know, towards the end, but I'm going to be honest, I was a very happy drunk. He was young, and he took advantage sometimes. Like, I was one of the people who drink. I get more and more generous. I'm having fun. I'm not an angry drunk. They say your true personality kind of comes out. Like, I just actually got nicer. And I think he kind of liked it, and I think I was more playful, and I had to, kind of learn, like, I'm still playful. Like, I can be playful when I'm sober, like, I don't have to drink, I can just do other things to bring that playful side out. And it's a journey, because I felt like I needed the alcohol to have fun, and that it wasn't true. That was a story that I was telling myself, but it's not true.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my son, towards the end, he did try to kind of point those things out. But I think when he was younger, he liked the mom who had the nice buzz and would be like, yeah, sure, let's go do that. Sure, I'll buy you that. You know what I mean?
I wonder though, if deep down, it'd be an interesting discussion, but I wonder if deep down he still sensed something's not right here. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Mhm. He had to have. There's no way he didn't. And you know, I was always half-assing it through my next day. I couldn't think of a better way of saying it. So he noticed that. He noticed I was dragging, not in as good of a mood as normal, because I was feeling the shame and the guilt that comes along with that whole cycle. So he definitely noticed all that. We didn't have a lot of deep discussions towards the end, when I was like, okay, I'm going to quit. And then I realized how hard it is. It's like extremely, you know, addiction's nothing to do with intelligence. And I think that that's what I needed, is that experience. Because I was like, it's like really wild, everyone I know who's struggling with addiction, they're some of the most intelligent people. And it's just so interesting how much a substance can take control, or a
yeah,
person, or food, how much it can take control over your life when you realize it. And I didn't give it up my first try, for sure. It took quite a few tries. And now, that's why I got into doing addiction recovery. Is, well, honestly, when I first started doing it, I didn't realize I had an addiction. When I'm reading all this stuff and educating myself, I was like, oh my gosh, educating myself on alcohol. I was like, uh-oh, like, that's what woke me up to, that my sleep problems could be associated with alcohol. My anxiety could be associated with alcohol. And I'm just over here thinking I had insomnia. I didn't have insomnia. It went away as soon as I quit drinking.
yeah,
Who
yeah.
knew?
So how long ago did you actually quit drinking?
A little over 4.5 years ago. And
Okay.
I do not count days. Like, I know what day it was, because it
Yeah.
was my friend's birthday. And I was like, okay, this is the last time I'm going to drink. But it was September 8th, whatever, and then like 4.5 years ago, whatever that was. So
Hmm.
um, but
2019.
okay, thank you. Yeah.
I just did
Look,
the math.
Thank you so much, because
Yeah,
I'm
you
trying
really
to get that
needed
in
to
my
know that.
head, and I'm
Yeah.
like, but
Well,
I
yeah, go
forgot what
ahead.
your question was. I'm sorry.
No, you answered it. It was just it's interesting. Well, all I asked was how long ago did you stop? But that must have also affected what you were coaching and teaching. But let's go back to that a little bit. So, what did you do? You went to college, I assume.
Yeah, long time ago.
And what did you do after college?
Well, I actually went back to college and finished a couple degrees when I was 37. So, and what I got was organizational leadership, because I was a person who didn't know what I wanted to do. I was all over the place. I mean, honestly, the amount of degree hours, credit hours that I have is ridiculous.
Hmm.
I could definitely have PhD, but I just kept changing my degree plan because I didn't know what I wanted, but I loved psychology. I thought I was going to be a dietitian for a while. I just could not find my purpose.
Hmm.
And the first time I heard about being a life coach, though, I was like, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. And I immediately, even though I had all this education, and you actually don't need a certification or anything to become a life coach. It's crazy. Like, you don't legally need that, but I got 8. I decided that I was like, I just love learning, and I didn't want to, a lot of people have a very specific niche. Um, it turns out, like, at the root of almost every issue somebody has is some form of addiction, even if it's an addiction to their negative thoughts or overthinking or any type of patterns that someone might have. Is it's at the root of it all. It's some form of addiction, and some of those addictions are just mental. A lot of people get addicted to drama, and it's so weird, but it's the same type of dopamine hit, and that comes up a lot with the relationship addictions. People get addicted to dating. There's sex addiction out there. There with these dating apps. There's people addicted to dating apps. I have
Yeah.
clients like that. Yeah, I mean, it's endless the things you can. So basically, I help people break those old patterns and just so they could live their optimal life. Because once you're free of that, you could actually find the love, and what we're really looking for is abundance and happiness. That's what we all just want to feel better. That's all we want.
Yeah. And you can do it in a willful way, or you can do it in an addictive way. A willful way being you you can bring that about yourself with your
Yeah.
own mental faculties, as opposed to relying on so many other things, which is of course what you're really saying. So many people just rely on, whether it's drugs or alcohol or whatever. It is unfortunate that we don't learn and we don't get taught how
Hmm.
maybe to address some of these issues a whole lot earlier.
Yeah, and I think we see it a lot in men for that reason, because because the thing we talked about earlier with society is you're not allowed to show your feelings. So then who wants to numb out more than a man who's told he's not allowed to feel what he's
Yeah.
feeling, but he knows he's feeling it. It's awful. Um, but yeah, that's exactly right.
So you went off to college, got out of college and did stuff, but you essentially ended up really going into life coaching.
Yeah, and I got married and divorced in that time. I was a stay-at-home mom for a while, and but yeah, when I got into coaching, that was like I said, as soon as I heard it was a thing, and there's still people. I'm in Cincinnati. There's still people in Cincinnati who are like, "What is life coaching?" So
Yeah.
it's not really, not everybody knows about it. And also, what is law of attraction? Nobody knows about that either.
Well,
So
let's talk about that.
yeah, you want
So
to talk about that?
yeah, so what is the law of attraction? Let's delve into that a bit, because that's clearly a lot of the foundation of what you do and what you are today.
Yeah, so I would start by saying my whole life, I kind of innately knew about it. I didn't know there was a label for it, but I definitely noticed it. I was always talking to people like, when I think this and when I feel this, this happens. And when I think this and I feel this, this happens. I definitely saw this connection of how my thoughts and my feelings and the energy I'm putting out into the world caused certain results. Like I could see it from the time I was a child. And I would talk to people about it and they'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. And some days I'd be like, man, I feel like I'm repelling people. And other days I would feel like, man, everybody and their grandmother wants to talk to me today. And it was just like, I didn't know it was like an energetic thing. Essentially, well, when I was in 2006, my friends invited me over to watch. We had a watch party for the movie The Secret. It was a documentary, The Secret. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been trying to explain to everybody. Yes, this is it. And so The Secret isn't really a secret. It's always been a thing. They just kind of were marketing it as a secret, right? But the law of attraction is simply it's science, it's nothing to do with religion. Except for the fact that I believe God created the universal laws, of course. So this is another universal law, like the law of gravity. We don't get a choice to say that I'm going to apply the law of attraction today, because it's just like any other law. It just is. So it's happening. We're always manifesting. And what I mean by that is the energy, everything's energy. This is science based. Everything is energy. And the energy we put out will be the energy that we bring back. Like attracts like. What we focus on gets bigger. These are the law of attraction 101 basic premises. So that's what I was noticing growing up, is like, man, I could tell the way I thought and the way I felt directly affected my day. And so then I started to really delve into it, and just, honestly, I got to a point where I just knew too much about the law of attraction and how we create our own reality, and how if you don't deliberately like pay attention and focus on your thoughts and your feelings, your emotions, basically, if you don't pay attention and you're just kind of on autopilot, then what you're doing is you're drawing things into your day just by default. So I'd much rather be a deliberate creator of my life, a deliberate creator of how my day goes, and start taking that personal responsibility. And there's basically, it's about controlling your thoughts, and not controlling is a bad word, but at least redirecting things, because we can kind of go on a downward spiral with our thoughts, right? We can get in a bad momentum. So we could momentum's actually another good word for law of attraction. Mm-hmm. So you can start your day and, stub your toe right when you get out of bed. Then you're going to spill coffee on yourself. You know what I mean? Then you're going to yell at your kid, and, it could just kind of go downward spiral. So that momentum is just exactly a perfect example, but it also works the other way. So law of attraction is just manifesting. We're attracting things via the energy we're putting out, but via our thoughts and our feelings. And our feelings are huge. So we could say so many positive affirmations. I'm sure everybody who's listening has heard of positive affirmations. You could say them all day, every day, but if you don't feel it's true, then it's good to say positive affirmations. I'm not saying it's bad, but you also want to feel the truth in them. We can only create things within our personal belief systems. Our beliefs are important. Our beliefs are everything. All we see is our beliefs, right?
Well, words are not in of themselves powerful. It's really the thought that we put behind or don't put behind the word. So Absolutely. You're right. It's all about what we really think and what we really feel. And we can use words to express that. But that's going back to, as you talked about before, directing your thoughts, and controlling may not be the right word necessarily, yeah. but still, you can learn to control and to focus your thoughts or direct your thoughts. And that is what so many of us don't learn to do. And we just,
right. We have sloppy thinking, sloppy thinking. And like you said, it's more the meaning that we attach to things creates the importance of them, right? Because two people can have the same exact trauma, and one of them attaches this horrible meaning and it destroys the rest of their life. Well, the other one doesn't attach a horrible meaning and they just have a completely different experience with it. So it's really all about the meaning that we attach to things that happen to us. And, I have clients And also not only clients, but just people in life that I just know, who had something, and I'm not taking away from the trauma, but something traumatic happened to them in their childhood, and they carry it with them all day, every day. And it's like, oh my gosh, at some point, we have to, because what we're doing when we just focus on something that happened, like when we're 5 or 6 years old, or even 12, or whatever age it was, if when we make that our identity, we're kind of we're becoming the victim every single day, over and over again, like re-victimizing ourselves. I don't think
Yeah.
that's
But that's something that collectively or individually we do have some control over.
yes,
If we choose to really decide to redirect and change what we feel, then we can make some progress. But we do have to make that decision.
it's a personal accountability. It's changing from the victim mentality to the victor mentality, becoming the victor of your life. And you got to be your own hero, because like no one's going to come save us. Like I've had a lot of dark stuff happen to me. I could sit there and blame other people for everything. And honestly, I was in the victim mentality, especially going through my divorce. Like I was, I blamed him for everything. But the truth is I know that I attracted that relationship, and it turned out to be the best teaching. Like my ex-husband was inadvertently a master teacher for me. You know what I mean? Like we can look at it like we were a victim of something, or we could look at it like, wow, I learned so much. And it's the difference between having a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, right?
Yeah.
So I take everything in life that way. I've had a lot of dark stuff, but I just turn everything negative into how can I use this to help other people? And that is my intention with my practice.
So you decided that you were going to be a life coach and so on. And as you said, you don't legally have to get certified for it, but you've got what, 18 years of experience now at doing it.
And I have, yeah, no. Have only been like practicing like for my career, only 6 years as a life coach.
All right. Okay.
6 years. Yeah. But, yeah, no, I went to school. I didn't know I was going to be a life coach when I got my organizational leadership degree, which was basically, and I have applied sociology and communications, and it's all of those things fit beautifully into it. But I didn't know I was going to be a life coach. It just happened to be all the classes that I was very interested in, and I was just so close to all of these degrees, and so I just got all of them. You know what I mean? But because I had taken so many classes prior, and I was like, okay, I got my divorce. I'm like, time to finish. I got to finish what I started. I got to finish my degrees. So, yeah, but they all fit perfectly. So, you know how things kind of unfold that way. Like, I didn't know I was going to be a life coach, but I think God did, so I have the perfect education. And then, yeah, I did end up getting like 8 certifications too on top of that, just because, like I said, I love learning anyway. And I'm going to be studying this stuff, so I might as well just have a certification with it.
So
That's how I
there
thought.
you go. So how did you decide, or why did you finally then decide to become a life coach? What was the threshold you crossed over to do that?
It just felt like a calling. As soon as I heard what a life coach was, I was like, this is it. I can't explain it. Like, it was just a no-brainer. I immediately took action. I immediately took the steps to do this and start my business. It was not even a question. It's just one of those things that I know this is my calling. And
Yeah.
finally, because remember all the decades of taking all those classes, not having that direction. So I think I had to wait until life coaching was really a thing, a career.
Wow. Yeah. So you made that change, and it's probably in one sense not a magical surprise that if you started being a life coach 6 years ago, something happened along the way that 4.5 years ago you also decided to deal with that addiction.
That's a great question, and you're right, 100%. I could not. I have a lot of integrity. There is no way that I could help people with addictions while I'm struggling with an addiction. No way. So I just had to, and I didn't even think I did. Remember, I didn't even think I had a problem, because I'm comparing myself to the world, and everyone's doing exactly the same thing I am. And the majority of people, everyone I knew I'll put it that way. So I didn't think I had a problem, but then as soon as I realized I did, I was like, wow, especially when you try to stop and realize how little control you actually had that you thought you had. I was like, I can quit anytime I want. Well, it was not that easy. And I think just I'm helping people with all kinds of addictions, like the relationship and the food, and I'm helping people just with their limiting beliefs. That's another huge thing that I do, and
Mm.
breaking old patterns of all kind, anything that's stopping them. I'm helping people with their careers so they can level up in some way. There's always some sort of block that I'm trying to help people through, and I just needed to be my best version of myself in order to have the integrity that I needed in order to continue. I had to be sober. I had to be a sober coach. No
Well,
other option.
and that makes sense. And it also gives you then the extra strength of, I went through it and I learned how to deal with it.
Exactly. And I that was the integrity part, is there's no way that, like, everything that I teach in my practice and um, with my groups or one-on-one, or anything that I'm doing on social media, is something I've been through myself. And I could not teach something that I haven't conquered.
Hmm. Well, and that's important, because if you've really done that, and I'm only saying it that way to get to this, if you've really done that, then you can talk about it with a lot of conviction that you
Hmm.
can't if you haven't really done it.
Exactly. And that's why it was a no-brainer for me to just, you know, release alcohol from my life. That's what I feel like I did. I didn't go to AA. I used all of the law of attraction techniques that I had learned. Um, and that's where the idea of my deck of cards came from, actually, is because I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't do AA. I didn't like AA. I am not against anyone who, if AA is helping you, it's a fabulous tool. Stick with it. But I know there's other people out there like me who don't like it, and who actually, for me, I found it anti law of attraction. Okay.
Hmm.
And here's why. Because anytime you say I am, and then there's a blank, and you fill in the blank, I am an alcoholic. Well, you're in creation mode. I am is very powerful words. I am. So you got to be careful what that word is. That's why I don't say I am an alcoholic. I would never
Hmm.
say that. I'm a person who used to have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. That's true. I used to. I don't anymore. So I think to continue and saying I am an alcoholic, you're continuing, to really quit an addiction or even just a bad habit. You got to change your energy. You got to change at an energetic level. You got to, I just changed my identity completely
Hmm.
by changing my energy first. And that's why that's why my deck of cards is created to shift the person's energy who has them. So then they no longer are the same person. They're awake. If they apply the cards, you can't just buy them and put them on your nightstand and not use them.
Right.
But they teach all of the law of attraction techniques. They will shift your energy if you apply them, and you pick one every day and you just make that your daily focus. And instead of going to a meeting every day and staying in that older vibration of, I'm like, I'm not going to go to a meeting every day and keep reinforcing that I'm an alcoholic. Like, I'm going to change my identity, and I'm no longer that person who orders wine when I go to a restaurant, or especially at lunchtime, which I did often. I'm no longer that person. That's not my identity anymore. That's not even in my energy field. That's a different person who did that.
Do, do you ever take a drink anymore?
Absolutely not.
Uh-huh.
There are two different types of people. You can be a moderator, and some people can do that. And if they are good at moderating, I'm not against, like, oh, nobody should ever drink alcohol. If you have control, if you are someone who can moderate and you stick to what you say, like, I'm going to have one or two drinks, and you can actually do that, more power to you. But you're either a moderator or an abstainer. And I'm really good at abstaining, but
Hmm.
like I said earlier, I don't have that stop button. I'm unstoppable. That's how I'm going to start saying it. That sounds more empowering. I'm unstoppable.
There you
So,
are. See?
yeah, yeah. So I didn't have that. And I also heard it described as like, a dial, like some people can, like, tuning a dial, like on a radio station, they can tune it up and down. And I'm not a dial person. I'm a switch person. I'm either
Hmm.
all in or all out, like a light switch. That's how my personality rolls. Like I'm really good at abstaining. I can turn it off, but when I'm on, I'm on. And that's how I am in every aspect of my life. I'm an extremist. I really am. Like I'm someone who, when I go all in, I'm going to go all in. And so for me, abstinence works really, really well. I'm actually very good at it.
I know that I'm perfectly capable of going to a restaurant with people. And if they order a drink, I can order one.
Mhm.
And like I like bourbon and seven, but if I were really honest with myself, it's because I like the seven up more than the bourbon. But
Yeah.
I I have never been drunk and don't want to be. Just really have no desire even to have anything like that. But I know I'm capable of going and having a drink if it's a matter of being sociable. And sometimes I've even decided, nope, not going to have anything tonight. But I hear exactly what you're saying, and it is important that we need to really understand and create boundaries, know our boundaries, and that kind of a thing. But for me, I don't even think about it in terms of numbing feelings or anything like that. And I guess that's I'll feel blessed because of that. But
You're not an addict. Yeah.
no, in no way. And I don't even want to ever think about it. I couldn't like it enough. I have a friend who now, how long ago? Gosh, it's maybe um 17, 18 years. He had a heart attack and his doctors told him to stop smoking because he was a pretty heavy smoker. And he amazed us all because he stopped. He never had
Wow.
another cigarette, which was pretty impressive.
Wow.
He now has cancer, which may in part be because of the smoking years ago, and he's got to deal with that. But he stopped. But it's such a rare thing to see.
That is, I did have a friend who he had quit drinking alcohol and like I think 5 years prior, and then ends up getting like a cancer related to
Mm.
alcohol and ended up dying. So it's like it's one of those things, you guys, like if you're listening to this and I'm relatable to you. It's I gotta be honest, like it is so much better. Like the sooner you do it, the better. That's my only regret is like, I'm glad that I got all the lessons that I got, but had I known how amazing my life was going to be without it, I would have stopped a lot sooner.
Yeah.
Now I'm living my optimal life. I do feel like I have leverage over a lot of people who drink every day. When you're
Hmm.
a non-drinker, we're kind of ahead of the game each morning. I wake up feeling amazing, and I used to wake up feeling like crap. So it's a beautiful thing.
So you're not buying into Dean Martin's comment about he feels sad for people who don't drink because when they get up in the morning, that's as good as they're going to feel for the rest of the day.
Oh, I used to love that. I used to love
I,
that because I would say that stuff, and I would make
yeah,
all the jokes because
yeah,
it makes us feel better for our addiction when we joke about it. Like when I look at social media and even people that I know personally, my friends, and I see it looks like they're having so much fun and they're out
yeah,
partying and all you see is the good stuff, but no one's taking pictures of the middle of the night when they're up at 3 a.m. with their heart racing. No one's taking pictures of the next day when they're yelling at their kids because they feel like crap, because
yeah.
no one's taking pictures of that. They're only taking pictures of the fun times, which is so temporary. That time that you're feeling good from alcohol is like maybe a couple hours before you start going downhill, honestly. And I'm talking about, drinking, like not your level of drinking, Michael. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm talking about people who go out
No,
and
I know
party,
what you're saying.
like
Yeah,
we call them weekend warriors. Like they
yeah.
might not drink all week, but on the weekend they're gonna go out and they're gonna have fun. Well, there's a very small window of that fun time, and then the whole next day. I think that like if you go out on a Friday night, you're not gonna feel that great Saturday, Sunday, or even Monday if you really party. If you're a weekend warrior,
Yeah.
like like it's affects you, and it's you got to ask yourself, is this really worth the trade-off? Is it
But
worth the
you
trade-off? Some
but
people
you've
might
got to
say yes.
but you've got to really be able to stop and think about that. And one of the things that I talk a lot about when the opportunity arises on this podcast is the fact that we really need to if we possibly can do, well, we all can do it. If we would do it, stop at the end of the day and take a look at what happened today, what worked, what didn't work. Really go back and think about what we've done, be introspective. And unfortunately, we don't teach that.
I
I
know.
think a lot more people would recognize what you're saying if we really were capable of stopping at the end of the day. I shouldn't say if we were capable, because we are, if we would really take the time to stop at the end of the day and look at what happened and even the good stuff. Why was that good? What do I do to make it better? What do I do to have more of that? We don't teach ourselves. We don't stop and take that step back. And if we would do it, we would learn a lot more about ourselves and we would be a lot better for it. But we don't get taught how to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm really big on journaling and like having some sort of mindfulness journal where you reflect. I do it myself in the morning and in the evening, where I'm, okay, in the morning you're preparing, okay, for the day, and then at night you're reflecting, like you said. And you keep saying this, and it's so true. Like how we weren't taught. Like it seems like we're taught a bunch of stuff that we're never going to use, but things
Yeah.
that are super important in school. Like I think our whole system needs to change. Like I would love to see meditation in school. Just
Yeah.
learn it's really difficult to try to learn things like that as an adult. you know
Yeah.
when we're kids, we're little sponges. So that's the time to teach things like, and also, can you imagine like how much more peaceful the world would be if kids learn to meditate? And then, like I do see such a huge difference in myself and other people when they do either some type of breath work, meditation, just taking that time to reflect, like you're saying, with a journal, some type of reflection. And I think there's a lot of magic in writing things down, especially when it comes to the law of attraction. Um, when you write things down, like it's way more likely to come to fruition. And I'm saying write it down in a pen, not just your iPhone notes. Like it's really important to, just take that time to create your intentions and come up with that clarity, because we all have goals that we want to reach, but like we don't spend a lot of time getting clarity on what do you actually want. So you have to really take that time to set your intentions.
Well, what I do, because journaling, I could journal in Braille, but what I like to do is to put reminders and various things and notes on my lovely little Echo device. And
Oh yeah.
magically at times during the day when I have forgotten all about it, suddenly it says, this is a reminder that, and that's cool. We really, however we do it, need to take the time to vision and to really remind ourselves of what we truly want. And when we do it and it's real and it isn't, oh, I need to have another drink now,
Right.
but rather, whatever it is, but to truly establish visioning for our lives, it's extremely powerful however we do it.
I'm so glad you said that too about that daily, because yeah, this is all daily work for me. And that's probably like how the AA, like one day at a time stuff, like this is stuff that it's kind of like we have to work on our mind, like holistically. Like I'm a transformational but a holistic life coach, so I help people mind, body, spirit, right? Because if one of them's out of balance, we're all out of balance.
Yeah.
So like it's kind of like expecting, okay, well, I'm going to go to the gym every day, I'm going to hit my goal weight, I'm going to be like, now I got the perfect body, so now I can just stop. No, that's not how it works. You got to keep doing stuff to maintain it. So that's where
Mm-hmm.
that's where we have to be. Is every single day I work on raising my vibration, is what I call it in law of attraction terms. I keep my vibe high. Like there are things that I know that I personally need to do to set myself up for success the following day. I go to bed at a certain time. I have a routine, and I sound really boring, but this is like, I love to start my day out with a routine. Like I used to hate it, but it's because I felt awful. I was not setting myself up for success.
Yeah.
And now I love it. I look forward to it. There's definitely life on the other side of alcohol. And every single day I do things that I know are going to make me feel good. And now I have a Facebook group called Addicted to Feeling Good. That's my new addiction. So, we got to replace old addictions with better, healthy addictions, right? Because once you get rid of something, like that's why a lot of people Like we'll go to AA. That's what it's great for. Then you have something to do where you used to go to happy hour. So I didn't choose AA, but I chose going to the gym, so I replaced it with something healthy.
Yeah. You've talked about spiritual awakening and spiritual transformation. Tell me more about that in your world.
So, I had a spiritual awakening when I was like 18 years old, and it's interesting because I didn't know what was happening because I've always had like interesting spiritual things happen in my life, kind of almost like a paranormal life, to be honest with you. But so I've never questioned if any of the stuff is real or true. I've always known that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. I've always known and felt that. And basically, I was always interested in spirituality and books. And when I was 18, I was reading a book on near-death experiences. And it triggered this awakening. It was like my soul remembered, oh yeah, this is how it really is. But I mean, it was just, it's hard to explain. It's hard to put into words, but basically it was beautiful, like a feeling of oneness. And it's lasted
Yeah.
2 weeks where I was just in this, it was like almost like being in another dimension than everybody else here, because I was in this, I was kind of given downloads. Like I had all this information. I understood things like quantum physics and things that did not stick in my mind, like I like to believe they're in there somewhere. But yeah, I just kind of understood all these things. Any question that I had, it was answered for me. And I could look at the homeless person and be like, oh my gosh, like I remembered this happening. Like this guy chose, he's actually like, this was what he chose to do for his life. And he was like the smiley homeless guy that I saw every morning. And I just looked at him so differently because I realized this was his life purpose. And he's actually out there making people happy. Like it was just this higher perspective, right? Than especially for an 18-year-old. Well, it lasted about 2 weeks and I could slowly feel the vibration going down. And now I look back on it and I think, wow, this was all part of the beautiful unfolding for what I teach and what I do, because having that personal experience was absolutely a gift to me. So then I can be more confident in what I teach. A lot of people are going to think I sound crazy. I get it. Those aren't my people. That's okay. Like I don't need to convince everybody of my personal belief system, but the people that I do resonate with, I mean, I have people all the time. Oh my gosh, I heard you talk about that spiritual awakening on a podcast. The same exact thing happened to me, so I'm helping other people with, with my podcast. I have a podcast called Spiritual Transformation Podcast with Mary Beth. And that's what you're going to be on it. I'm looking forward to you being on my show. And
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we tell stories of, transformation. It could be spiritual or just any type of inspiring story of transformation. And I do have psychics on there, people who are spiritually gifted, any type of leading edge spiritual teachers and healers, because it's just really a community for us to all learn together. So we know we're not alone and we're not crazy. We just have been like enlightened in some way that others choose maybe a different path, and that's okay. Everyone's entitled to have their own journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can all have our own path. And I gave up trying to convince people of stuff. The right people will find me, and it's okay for the people who don't like what I teach.
And they'll find themselves, and they'll find what they need to find. That's
exactly. They are allowed to have their own journey.
Well, so what's a typical life coaching session like?
That's a really good question. And I thought there was one when I first started this. I thought, okay, so I'm going to do this in session 1 and this in session 2 and this. And it was not, oh gosh, just nothing like that. It turns out, so my sessions are actually longer because I do 90 minutes instead of an hour. And since my coaching's accountability, my packages include having contact with me in between sessions, because, my people are usually trying to stay accountable for something, right? Even if it's just something to do with their career, they need some sort of accountability. So I do make myself available in between sessions. So basically what I've learned is every client is actually a self-healer, and I'm only guiding them. And they actually will tell me like at the beginning of a session, I'm like, okay, what do you want to make sure that we hit today? Like, what are your goals for this session? And then I do keep them on track. But sometimes it's just the sessions go where they go,
Mm-hmm.
and it's always for a reason. And for me to try to structure someone else's session was not working out. Like it's so much more beautiful to be in the present moment with them, and you can see, everyone has their own inner guidance, everyone has their own connection with God, and I can't put that on someone when I can actually witness them coming to their, as they're talking, like, oh my gosh, like coming to their own healing, basically, like just by guiding them, asking the right questions. And it's really amazing. Of course, I give people tools. Tools are really big. That's a big difference with, I'm not saying you don't get any tools in therapy, but I give homework. I give tools that people can start applying right away. And there is no typical session. It is literally different for everyone, because I got to meet people where they are. I've hired coaches and they actually will sit there and like read a course to me. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do that because that's awful, because they don't know where you are. Like
Yeah.
I've hired a business coach and sat there and read to me like their core stuff. I've already, like, I knew all of that, like, and anyway, it's happened several times that way where I did not learn anything. So every single session is individualized with me, like, so I meet the person where they are. Like, I'm not going to waste any time going over stuff that somebody already knows. And we get right to I do let people talk about their past. I need to hear about your history. We need to get to the root cause. Some coaches are more about, we're just going to stay present and future. But I think it's really important. If I'm helping people break addictions and patterns, I need to know their history. I need to know some of that stuff. What I don't do, like a therapist would do, is dwell on it for a long time. And, because I actually don't believe, I believe if you think, okay, this this stuff is going to take 20 years. It's going to take 20 years. I believe I can heal. I can heal quickly, and everyone can heal quickly. I don't think we have to stay so attached to these old patterns and beliefs. As soon as we recognize the pattern, we begin healing immediately. You know what I mean? It's the recognition and interrupting those patterns that makes all the difference.
It's all about choice.
Yeah, and the energetic shift.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, like I said, that's what my cards do. And I do, everyone who will do a session with me, but like afterwards they feel like an energetic shift. It's because, it's an energetic exchange that we're having. You know what I mean? And when you're talking to someone who's positive and rooting for you, and you're cheerleader, and who's showing you your own strength, of course you're going to feel good at the end of a session, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would leave therapy crying, that I didn't therapy. I never really had a good therapy session, to be honest with you. And I really thought I wanted to be a therapist for a long time. And I have friends who have their own practices, and they're asking me, how do I become a life coach? Because apparently there's a lot of bureaucracy going on in that world.
Well, and there are differences, with therapists
Yeah.
are supposed to be very much involved in providing answers, and you're supposed to be a guide, as you put it, which is
Yeah.
what makes sense. Well, if people would like to reach out to you, and I hope they will, how do they do that?
So, probably the best way to reach out to me, I'm on all platforms, like, but my website is day1lifecoaching.com, DAYONE lifecoaching.com. And actually, for your audience, Michael, I have a coupon code if anybody wanted to buy any of the products. And that coupon code is the word transform. So it'll be $10 off, either the deck of cards, or I also sell some essential oils that, are like law of attraction, raise your vibration essential oils. So I have those products, and yeah, the coupon code transform, and that's on my website, day1lifecoaching.com.
Well, I hope people will reach out,
Oh, me
and
too.
I hope that we were able to provide some really great insights, and that people found this helpful. Um, I'd love to hear from you. I'd like to hear that you liked this, so please let me know. I'd like to ask you to email me at michaelhi at accessibe.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today, and I will definitely share them with Mary Beth, but reach out to Mary Beth as well. And you can do that through the website. So please do that. Wherever you're listening, please give us a 5-star rating. We love to get good positive ratings from people. So please do that. And please tell others about the podcast. This is all about showing everyone that you can be more unstoppable than you think you are or than you think you can. And I have always believed that and will continue to. So we hope that you'll tell others about us. If anyone, including you, Mary Beth, knows anyone who ought to be a guest on Unstoppable Mindset, please let me know. Please provide introductions. We're always looking for more people who want to come on and talk and tell their stories and have fun. So with that, I want to again, Mary Beth, thank you for being here today and taking the time to come on Unstoppable Mindset. And maybe we'll have to do it in the future. And I'm looking forward to being on your podcast.
Can't wait.
Sounds good to me. So thanks again.
Thank you.